So this is just going to be a very high level overview of how the school side and district level parent committees work, how parents and community can participate. We're going to go over some law citations in terms of what is the district required to have as committees and how parents can participate. And the message here is really that parents and community members have the right to participate in these committees. We're going to be using the Q&A. So if anybody has questions, please put your questions into the Q&A. We're going to be sharing documents and links in the chat. You can also set your transcription language if you need to. You can change that over to Spanish and English. Tomorrow evening, we'll be doing this same presentation all in Spanish. Tonight is all in English, but you can change the language on there if you need to. So let's get right into it and get going. So just starting out here, just let me give you a little bit of information about what it does say in state law in terms of parental rights. The parental involvement, the legislature finds and declares all of the following. It is essential to our democratic form of government that parents and guardians attending public schools and other citizens participate in those schools. Here it says this is a fundamental to the healthy system of public education. And it also says that the schools should genuinely welcome and encourage and guide families into establishing equal partnerships. Now, unfortunately, we know that that's not always how it works out here in the real world, but this is how it's supposed to work. But we do have the right to participate in all of these committees, and the schools should welcome us genuinely in that process. So one of these laws, again, in state law, specifically says that parents have the right to participate as committee members. The reason we're doing this right now is that most of these elections for the school site councils and committees start now in August, just as soon as school starts. The district level committees are going to come a little later, sometime in September. You may not have these dates yet at your schools and when the committee elections will begin, but they should be coming up in the next few weeks. The first committee at the school sites is the school site council. And these are the code citations on where it says in state law that these committees are required. Just for your information, just so that you know that all of these committees are mandated in state law. One of those committees that's supposed to work through the school site council is the school safety committee. Now, I know that no one knows about this committee. When I was on school site council, my school buried it. It never came up. We'll talk about this committee and how it works a little bit further as we go ahead. The other main committee at the school site is the English Learner Advisory Committee. Now, this is only for parents of English learners. And that committee, the ELAC, is supposed to work with the school site council. We'll talk some more about how that goes together. The local school leadership council, that one is not a committee that is set out in state law, but it is required by the teachers union bargaining agreement. So this is something that the teachers wanted. There should be the principal, teachers, other employees, and parents. And at the high school level, also students on this committee. Now, this committee is a little bit different. They mostly go through bell schedules, professional development, a lot of information on student discipline. So the message here is these are all committees at the school site. They're all public meetings. Okay, the school site council, the ELAC, they all have very specific requirements under open meeting laws, under state law. So agendas are supposed to be published 72 hours in advance of the meetings. They should be published on the school's website, actually at the door of the school. Now that most of these meetings are hybrid is when they're supposed to also be published on the school's website. Sometimes I find a lot of deficiencies in the notification of these committees coming up, the meetings, the elections. Unfortunately, a lot of the school websites don't have information that these committees even exist. Some do. Some have very thorough information on old minutes, agendas, materials that were distributed at these meetings, but a lot of schools have no information. So it really varies a lot. The other committees that I've noticed here on the list, the Parent Advisory Committee and the District English Learner Advisory Committee, those meet at the district level. I just wanted to throw that into the list here. There's also another committee called the CAC, which is for special education. That committee, the CAC, only to become a member, you have to file a whole application, and they have this huge selection process, so there's no election. But for the Parent Advisory Committee that we have here and the DLAC, there will be elections coming up in September. Now, we'll do a whole other webinar workshop on how those committees work and what they do, because there's a lot to that. I just wanted to throw that out, that at the district level, you can also participate, but the first 4 committees here are at the individual school sites. So we'll talk a little bit more about what goes on at each one, but mostly focusing on the school site council. Now, the main thing that the school site council does is it reviews student performance data. So this is academic data, and will then develop and approve a budget to use federal Title I funds. Okay, that will become the school plan for student achievement, the SPSA. That is the main task that the school site council is in charge of. That's the main responsibility. So the funds are supposed to be used based on the neediest student groups. So what is supposed to also happen is that then the ELAC, the English Learner Advisory Committee, is supposed to then provide input from their committee and provide that to the school site council, specifically on their recommendations for the use of Title I funds, specifically on English learner programs. That's the way it's supposed to work. I'm going to say that in my experience, doesn't work terribly well, but that's how it's supposed to be, because the specific point with Title I funds is that they're supposed to be supplemental. They're not supposed to supplant state funds, which are the responsibility of the state to fund. This is federal money that's supposed to come and just fill the special needs for the neediest students at each individual school. And so the school site council basically comes up with who are the neediest populations at the school. They put that into the school plan for student achievement. They develop the budget and approve the budget. So this is really important. The school site council is the only committee across the district where parents actually have a vote that directly affect the use of the funds. Now, the school site council also has, as part of the membership, the principal, teachers, employees, and at the high school level, students. So there's only usually a few parents on the school site council, but you still get to vote. Now, you may not be able to control with all the parents what you want. Typically, it's the teachers want what they want and the principal, and a lot of times the parents are outvoted, but at least you do get to vote on that directly. The other main point that the school site council does is they're also supposed to get to review what's called this Targeted Student Population Plan and the budget, the TSP. Now, this is just an LA Unified created structure based on, they're trying to balance out who are the neediest populations. But the state law requires that the school district gets additional funding for concentration and supplemental funds with state funds that they're supposed to use for low-income students, foster students, and English learners. And so the Targeted Student Population Plan and budget are supposed to pay for additional services for those populations. The school site council does not approve that budget. Typically, the principal does that on his own. What is supposed to happen, though, is that plan is supposed to be presented to the school site council. Unfortunately, in my experience, it doesn't happen. But you should ask if you're going to be a member of this committee. Then on top of that, this comprehensive school safety plan, which is a requirement in state law for school site council, is also supposed to go through the school site council, but the council may delegate the plan and create a safety committee to develop that plan. What happens is that, what's happened in my experience is that the delegation of that authority doesn't even happen. They see it as a formality. It doesn't happen. That plan goes out, gets developed completely outside of the school site council. But I would say if you're interested in safety issues at your school, demand that you not delegate this plan out. If you're a member of the school site council, you can just say, you know, I want this here. I want this to be maintained at the school site council. Hardly anybody knows that this plan even exists. The plan will be a public document. We'll talk a little bit more about it later. But these are the main functions of school site council. And this document here, which is called the School Site Council Year at a Glance, is kind of like an overview of how everything that the School Site Council is supposed to do ongoing. So as you see here in August and September, they're supposed to, right here, they assume that the committee is going to delegate that out and create that additional committee. Here, delegate school safety plan to the school safety committee. They're also supposed to share the TSP plan goals like we just talked about. They're supposed to go over the uniform complaint procedures training. I've never had that. None of the committees in my experience have actually done this, but it's all here in the district's policy and standards that all of this is supposed to be done. So you can use this document, the School Site Council Year at a Glance, to kind of guide, to get an understanding of what is involved in this committee if you're interested in becoming a part of this committee at your school. Kind of give you an idea. The ELAC also has a similar document that's called the ELAC Year at a Glance. So if we could get that dropped into the chat, that'd be great also. Gives you kind of the same setup in terms of how that's supposed to go throughout the year. So why are we talking about the school site council and this plan, the SPSA and the TSP plan? Well, because there's a lot of money involved. Okay, the budget, all these budgets are supposed to be tied to student needs. Federal funds, the Title I funds, are limited by federal law and what they can be used for. And then LA Unified Policy also limits to some degree what the TSP funds can be used for. But typically what happens is the principals have a lot of discretion and they push whatever it is that they want to have be the use of these funds. So it's up to at least the few parents that are part of the school site council to speak up and to say, well, I want to know why you're doing it like this. What happens when no one holds the school or the principal accountable? So I've seen it where the funds get used year after year in the same way without really assessing whether or not the use of the funds is effective. So it's up to the parents on the ELAC and school site council to really make their voices heard to say, no, we want something else. So typically what they'll do is they put out very low levels of what their expectations are. So if, let's say, math results, proficiency levels last year were, let's say 30%, they'll set the target for next year at 31%, something ridiculous like that. So that's typically how it goes when no one says anything. There is a website here with the school directory where you can access all of these plans, the SPSA, the TSP plan. You can get all of the budgets for your school in the school directory. Every single school has a page in this directory and you can get all this information. It's a little complicated to use. The budgets are not very good. They're not very transparent. In fact, this past year, the Board of Education passed a resolution to improve budget transparency coming up in the next year. We'll wait and see how well that works. But in my opinion, that's one of the things I talk about at the board a lot is how terrible the budgets are. And this whole issue with budgets became a bigger issue this year because of Proposition 28, the arts funding. A lot of more affluent schools, parents there were very active and were looking to see additional arts funding, and they couldn't see it. They couldn't see the transparency in the budget. And so this became a bigger issue because those parents got heard when they were complaining about not being able, they didn't know, they couldn't see what the arts funding was being used for. So I believe that was part of this movement to change how these budgets will look in the future. Remains to be seen if they will improve. So let's talk a little bit more about the school safety plan. Again, this is a requirement in state law. And here we go again. The intent of the legislature is that schools, in cooperation with persons, so not just parents, but any citizens who are interested in the prevention of campus crime and violence, can help develop the comprehensive school safety plan to address the safety concerns identified through a systematic planning process. Now, some of us parents know that but we don't have a whole lot of information on what is it that's really going on at the school. A lot of these issues of violence happen in secret. We don't have data on how many fights, how many drug incidents there are at the school level. We've gotten some more information about what the data at the district level and at the board district level, but we really don't know what happens in our schools. So this is a way to press the individual schools to provide more of that information, what's going on, and to have a voice in terms of creating the safety plan. Now, again, the school site council can delegate the responsibility to the school safety planning committee, may. And if they do create that additional committee, the makeup of the committee would be the principal, one teacher, one parent, one classified employee, but other members as well if desired. So clearly we could have more people that are part of this committee. They should also consult with a representative from a law enforcement agency in the development of the plan. In my experience, the first year I was on school site council, this committee, we never delegated authority. Somehow the plan got issued. I made a big stink out of it. So the next year they made a show of asking to delegate authority to the committee. But what happened? When I went to the meeting for the plan, for the safety committee plan, they had already adopted it, even though the state law here says that before adopting the plan, this committee is supposed to hold a public meeting at the school site to allow members of the public the opportunity to express their opinion. Well, when I showed up to this public meeting, the plan was done. It was already written. And so it was ridiculous. So clearly there are a lot of violations with this school safety plan. I think it's a very important place that parents can speak up if you know that this is supposed to be happening and that it's not happening as it's supposed to in accordance with state law. That's why I'm giving you here these state law citations. So we can start pushing to have our rights to participate in all of these committees, and not just as parents, but as members of the public in the community. So I have some more resources here. And if we could get some of the rest of these put into the chat, that'd be great. Again, we have the school directory where all of the schools are listed. You can find the school plan for student achievement, the TSP plans and the budgets. We also have the guidelines for these committees we're talking about, school site council and ELAC. This is the policy document, Bulletin 6745. So we know that the district violates their policies, but the policies are written and they're written in this document. We have the two guidance documents for school site council at a glance for the year and ELAC that show when these different functions of the committees are supposed to be happening. The school site council orientation checklist is another good document that kind of shows the requirements for employees on what employees are supposed to be doing at a particular time, how they're supposed to be documenting the actions of the committee. In terms of the Safe School Plan, this is another district policy that is, again, for the schools, how they're supposed to develop the plan and so forth. So it gives you a lot more information on making sure that they're doing it correctly. And this bulletin 132509 is the standards, all the policy document for the district level committees, the CAC, the DLAC, and the Parent Advisory Committee, the PAC, that we'll talk about in a different workshop. There's also an article I wrote a few years ago. It's a little bit outdated, but it's still out there. I'll put that in the chat in a minute. That kind of gives an overview about all of these different committees as well. Also, if you could fill out the survey link here, you can use the QR code if you want any more information. There's some open boxes in that survey. If you want to give us the name of your school, and your email address, I can send you a whole package with detailed data on performance, student performance, some budgets, the ones that I think are best. I can send that out to you so you'd have something to walk into if you want to become a member of the school site council, so you don't walk in empty-handed. So you already have a little bit of a background to start with so that you know what the committee is supposed to be doing. I can send you the school plan for student achievement, the TSP plan. Otherwise, schools are not always the best at providing this kind of information. And that's about it. Let me go back. I think we have some questions in the Q&A. Let's see, Deacon Wilson had some questions. And he had his hand up. So would you like to ask your question? I think I can unmute you.
Yeah, I think somebody said something in there to me and I figured out that they have those districts inside the school board districts.
Right, because every board member has their own, what they cover as, that's their voting district, and that's also the schools that they cover. Right. So we have the big district. We also have the regions. We have 4 regions. We got north, south, east, west. And then there are the 7 board districts that are managed by each of the board members.
All right, okay. Yeah, so the district site thing, okay, got it.
Right. And so there's some confusion sometimes about who is what authority over which area. So we used to have local districts, then they got rid of those, and now we just have the 4 regions. So,
Gotcha.
so yeah, so here's some more information on our social media sites. So please fill out that survey. If you want to receive future notices about future workshops and webinars, we'd love to provide you with more information. All of this is a little complex, all the district level committees, what they do, how to read budgets. Lots more good stuff is going to be coming out throughout the school year. This is just our first webinar this year. So thank you. Thank you for joining us. If there's no more questions, let's see. We have a lot of good information in the chat and documents. So thank you for joining us. Good night.